Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Gina Kenny with Ride Illinois. We have Dave Simmons, our executive director, that's joining us. And we are here at Richard's Bicycles in Palos Heights. So they were so kind as to host us today. Awesome shop, just swapped a new stem on mine. So thank you everyone for attending. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about us because I think we have some people here today that may not be as familiar with us. So we are the nonprofit statewide bike advocacy group. And these are some of the things on the slide that we advocate for: bike-friendly roads, more trails, legislation, education, and of course, just to share our love with cycling, get more people addicted and making biking better for you and everyone else. One of the things we do, I want to point out, is our bikesafetyquiz.com. This is a mountain biking session, but this gives you a lot of information on how to safely ride your bike on the road, as well as how to safely drive on the road. And we have a child version as well. This is our whole staff for our statewide group. Like you said, you have almost all of us on this webinar today. Dave Simmons is our executive director. There's myself, and then Ed Barsati, who, if you're familiar with us, he had been our executive director and we wouldn't let him fully retire. So he is now working part-time for us as our senior consultant. I want to point out our corporate members. We have 3 of them at this point, and more are being added pretty quickly. So we have Freeman, Dave, how do I pronounce that?
Freeman Kevinitis.
And he was so kind as to just do a bike law webinar for us not that long ago, which was recorded and is available. And then we also have civil tech engineering and Keating law offices. But the biggest reason we are able to do all of our advocacy work is because of our members. So I do want to invite all of you to check us out and consider becoming a member. I know a few of you are already, but other ways you can support us is just ride as often as you can, follow the rules of the road on every ride, promote us, take that bike safety quiz. And we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I want to point out, we do also have a monthly e-news, and you can sign up for that on our website, and then you can keep up to the latest stuff of what we're doing.
And if I could just say real quick, our website's working.
Yes.
Finally working. So you mentioned the recording of, like, Brendan, the bike law session. We're going to get that up and running, or up on the site probably on Monday. We're going to give it a couple days.
So this is my contact info, and it will be at the end of the presentation as well. But you can also contact us through Facebook or Twitter, and both Dave and I monitor all of that. So I do want to lay down just a few ground rules. We don't have a huge group today, but if you're not speaking, if you can keep yourself on mute. If you have comments, are going to go into the chat, and then I believe Dave said we have a Q&A that you can put questions. And since I will be mainly presenting, Dave's going to be so kind as to make sure that we know about any of those, and I can either answer them or Rich here at Richard's Bike can answer you. And then, of course, we're doing these to kind of just give us all a break. We're all inside and not getting together with people, so this allows us a way to safely do that. And as we've mentioned, this is being recorded, so if you thought this was awesome and want to catch something again, or if you want to recommend it to some of your friends to check it out, you will be able to watch that. So I do want to thank Richard's Bicycles. They're in Palos Heights. They are my local bike shop. We thank them very much for hosting this today. So ourbikes.com is their website. And then on our website, which Dave got up and running again just for this webinar today, so we could share this info with you. And we have a list of all the local bike shops, and we even have a map. So if you don't know where your local shop is, you can check us out and find out. I'm gonna switch in just a minute to another camera. We're gonna discuss very briefly the different types of mountain bikes out there. I do wanna say that if you decide to go mountain biking, you do want an actual mountain bike, not a hybrid or something of that nature. They would not be made to kind of withstand, not so much the abuse, but the stresses and stuff that you would on a mountain bike. And the picture is my fat bike. It's got wider tires than most. And then we're also going to briefly discuss gear. And last, like I said, visit your local bike shop. Some of the mass retailers have bikes that look very similar to mountain bikes, but they're not going to be put together quite as well or have as good of components. And a lot of them, like Richard's Bikes, has bikes you can demo. So rather than just ride it around their parking lot, you can take it to your local trails and check them out. So let me see, this is my first webinar I'm hosting today. Let me see if I can get it to highlight that. Oh, probably I have to stop sharing screen. Oh, and we're going, right? Okay.
Oh, hang on, Gina. We see you. I think we want to.
You can't see the bike in front of me because that's what's showing on mine.
I can't.
Not live video? No.
There you go. Now I see the bike.
Okay.
Everybody else seeing that as well? I realize it's tough to. Thank you. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, so we're good?
Yep.
So there are a couple different, the main mountain bikes are going to be what's called full suspension and hardtail. So the hardtail, I know it's a little bit harder to see because it's in the corner. You'll notice there's suspension in the front, which helps you get over roots and rocks and stuff easier. There's not any in the back. And then a full suspension, and in fact, on this one I can show you. So it goes down. And then in the back, there is also a shock. So I'm gonna point out that full suspension bikes are a little bit more forgiving. They will, however, be more expensive generally, and they're gonna have a little bit more upkeep because you will have to service the shock. The other thing I wanna point out real quick, there are two main wheel sizes. There is 27.5, which is here, which is about the same diameter as a road bike tire. And this is a 29-inch tire, so it is a little larger. Now, a lot of this is personal preference. A lot of people love 27.5, a lot of people love 29, myself included, which is why I recommend you kind of demo some bikes and get a feel of what you like. The other thing I'll point out, this bike does have a dropper post. They are nice if you're going down something very steep. They are, of course, more pricey than your average seat post. So when you're just starting out, it is not necessary. If it comes with your bike, that's awesome, but I wouldn't worry about the extra expense. Other gear, obviously want helmets. You do want to make sure it's fitted on your head kind of tightly, just like on a road bike. And then the other thing that there's lots of opinions on is if you want flat pedals, which are kind of like you may have had as a kid, and regular shoes, or if you want clipless pedals, which a lot of road bikes also have in these. What I'm going to recommend is that if you decide to get into mountain biking, either learn how to clip in and out of the pedals first and then work on skills, or work on skills and then once you're pretty good on those, then swap to clipless pedals.
Hey, Gina.
Yes.
So if just a suggestion, if you're showing something that needs to kind of show the detail, if you might come a little bit closer. Yeah.
Okay.
You can see the whole view fairly well, but yeah, if there's something in specific you want to point out, thanks.
Okay. So I'm assuming these are similar to what a lot of people ride on the road. And I do have a poll question. So if you forgive me, I'm going to walk back to the other computer and try to switch us back. Okay, here we are. And then let me see if I can figure out our polls. So this is if you previously mountain biked. Oh, we have a pretty, we're waiting for a few more to vote. We have 10 of 11. Okay, we're going to end the polling. So most of you actually have.
And then Gina, one thing, you could share the results too, so we can.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
There you go. Yeah.
So yes, looks like most of you have mountain biked in the past and some of you have not. This is an intro thing, so please, if we do not get to things that you are interested about, you can send us a message, and of course, we can always do a follow-up one of these as well. Okay, how do I get out of this? Okay, I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. Sorry, did we have chats that needed to be answered, or are we good?
No questions yet.
Okay.
Yeah, just compliments.
Thank you. Like I said, Dave is now kind of our pro at this. And the other thing I want to point out with demos, we know a lot of summer events are being canceled, and unfortunately our Grand Illinois Bike Tour had to just be canceled. But in the beginning of August, Canberra, the Chicago area mountain bikers, has a big event called the Palos Meltdown and Demo Day. So it will hopefully be the first Saturday in August. They have usually at least 10 different bike manufacturers that will have bikes there for you to try out for a small donation. So that is a very good time for you to try a lot of different bikes without going to a lot of different stores. Okay, so I wanted to show some pictures of trails. So these are not as pretty as some of the other slides, but the one on the upper left is actually myself and my son from many, many years ago, and that would be what's considered multi-track. So it's a pretty wide trail. It's usually pretty mild. This one has some crushed limestone. The bottom middle is, I believe that is Cemetery Hill, and then the one on the upper left, those are all at Palos, which is my local trail system. So single track is usually about the width of one bike, and you can tell these are mainly just dirt, so those are good ones for you to start on. And then I'm going to show a few intermediate trails on the next slide. So these might have, in the upper left, it's some rocks that they actually put because that area is just the last to always dry out, so it allows you to ride on it without damaging the trail. In the middle, you can see a bunch of roots that you would have to go over. And then in the upper right, you'll see there's some roots and a rock. Sometimes you also see logs and other things on the trail. So where to find trails? I believe a lot of our participants are in the area that Canberra, the Chicago area mountain bikers has trails. So I do want to point out their website. But we have, I believe, every sanctioned mountain bike trail in our state is on our mountain bike webpage. So it gives you a little bit of information about mountain biking. It lists all the trails, and it will usually give you a link to conditions, as well as give you links to all the trail groups. And then what I do want to point out, I believe we have a gentleman on with us today from the Forge. There is going to be a new mountain biking place opening in July in Lamont. A lot of the mountain bike systems in Illinois, there aren't fees. This one will have some fees, but it will also have a skills park and a pump track. And then some of you may be familiar, if you go to like Wisconsin, there's usually trail fees involved for that. So like I said, Dave has been working very hard to get our website up, and I know it was just so that we could share our mountain bike trail listing with you. So I am going to switch cameras again, and I'm going to go over just a few skills. Obviously, we're not outside, so I'm not going to be able to, I'm sorry, I should point out why you guys should actually be listening to me. Besides being addicted to mountain biking since probably about 1997, I am also a certified mountain bike instructor. So I'm a level 2 instructor, which means that I can pretty much teach people how to do everything up to jumps. And I've been teaching classes now for quite a few years. So I'm going to go over, and in fact, this is a picture of me riding on a trail in kind of a neutral position. We're going to go over the 3 essentials, and then I'm going to talk about and demonstrate real quick just the neutral ready position and the bike body separation. So I'm going to switch, and then Dave, if I end up not in the camera, you'll have to give me a quick heads up because I won't be able to see that.
Yeah, no, it looks good now. You're back focused on the bikes.
Okay, so one of the main differences between mountain biking and say road riding is when you're riding on your road bike, you spend a lot of time seated in the saddle. And when you're mountain biking, when you're pedaling, you're usually seated, not always. But when you're not pedaling, I'm almost always up out of the saddle and standing on the pedals. So one of the things we go over is that 3 essentials. And that is 1, let me try to get myself centered. You want to always, your eyes want to be scanning. You don't want to always be staring way out into the future or, you know, down the trail. and you don't want to stare right at what's in front of your wheel. Because if you're staring right there, you're not going to notice the rock or the root that you have to avoid or get prepared to go over 10 feet down the road or down the trail. And if you're always looking down the trail, then you may miss something sticking up that you hadn't originally noticed. So eyes are always scanning, and you usually want to always keep one finger on the brakes. Mountain bike trails, it's not like riding on the road. You don't know when you turn the corner if all of a sudden a tree has fallen in the past day or so and you have to stop suddenly. Also, almost all mountain bike trails are multi-use trails. So sometimes, particularly when it's nice weather and there is not social distancing in place, you might turn the corner and encounter a large group of people that are just kind of walking and talking. So one finger on the brake all the time. And if you have disc brakes, like, let me turn the bike around so it's easier to see. Disc brakes, you usually only need one finger for sufficient braking power. If you do have rim brakes, where you have the pads, then you might need two. But if you only have one finger on the brakes, you have a lot more ability to maneuver the bike. And then the last thing would be level pedals. So when you are not pedaling and you're up off the seat, you want to keep these pedals level. One, you are a lot more sturdy. I'm gonna set the bike down for a moment. You are, of course, a lot more sturdy if you're like this than if you're trying to stand on one leg. The other thing, though, is if one of these pedals is dropped, that this is a natural surface, maybe there is now a root exposed which hadn't been before. And if you're just cruising along with one pedal down, then there's always the possibility that pedal is going to clip the root and the bike's going to stop, but you're not necessarily going to. So I am going to go into what's called a neutral and a ready position. Like I said, when I'm not pedaling, I am almost always standing up on those pedals. So neutral is kind of what was in the picture that was on there before. You just have a very slight bend in your knees and your arms, and you're kind of ready. You're paying attention to what's coming on, but there's nothing, I don't want to say serious, but there's nothing technical. So maybe if you're on the multi-track, you're cruising in the parking lot, ready position, there's a much deeper bend in your knees and your arms. And that might be, if it's a technical section, if you're getting ready to say, lift your front wheel up, but it's also not like a switch. So the amount that you're upright or lower is going to vary a lot depending on the conditions. And you'll also forgive me, so you guys can hear me. I have an earpiece on, and I didn't think a helmet and the earpiece would work, but I also don't plan on pedaling, so we should be safe. So, neutral position, kind of just a slight bend. Ready, and I'm going to really exaggerate this, you're very much down low. Like I said, in reality, it's kind of varying. The last thing that I want to discuss, because it's really hard to do this on a webinar and not actually in person, is bike body separation. So, and for these, you would again be standing up on the bike, level pedals. So you may have noticed if you're riding your road bike, if you're climbing up a steep hill, you want to keep more weight on that front tire. So when you're in that ready position, you're moving your whole body forward some. So your hips are in front of the seat, your shoulders are going to be more forward. And conversely, if you're going down a steep downhill, you're going to want to have your weight further back so that you don't possibly have the rear wheel pop up. So again, you're in that ready position, you're moving your hips back, and you're not locking out your arms because then you don't have as much control. You're still keeping a slight bend, but you're moving back. And again, I'm going to demonstrate this. I'm going to exaggerate it. Obviously, this is not a hill, but again, the amount that you're going forward or the amount that you're going backwards is going to depend on the terrain. So if I'm going uphill, I'd be moving farther forward. If I'm going back, I'd be getting further back. And of course, when you're braking, if you have to stop suddenly, that's also a time you might be putting your weight a little bit further back since you don't have a seat belt on your bike like you do a car. So I am going to switch back over to the slides. So if you can give me one quick second. And Dave, have we had any other questions? Any questions pop up, or are we still doing good?
I think we're doing good. Byron just wanted to commented that he appreciates the mention of the forge. So feel free to enter any questions, and we'll keep an eye on that. So.
Okay. And the one thing that I did not get into today is there is also side-to-side bike body separation. And that would be, say, if you're trying to keep your balance, if you're riding something narrow. And then as you kind of progress your skills, if you are turning sharply, you're actually leaning the bike more as opposed to turning the wheel. But that would be something very difficult for me to show in Richard's bikes today. Why isn't sorry, there we go. The other thing I want to point out is, like, a day like today is not a day that you would decide to go mountain biking, because since this is dirt, we do need to be careful of the trail conditions. Some people think, oh, you just don't want your bike to get muddy. And I know it's a little hard to see in this slide, but if you ride on the trails and it's not hard, compact dirt, you are going to start to leave ruts. And then those ruts get worse over time. The trail crew, instead of building new single track, they are trying to fix damage. And right now, unfortunately, there are no trail days scheduled because nobody can be more than 6 feet close to each other. So that website that we have, the webpage that lists trail conditions, like I said, or the trails, it also lists trail groups. And if you go to the websites, most of them will tell you what the current trail conditions are. So Camber, which manages Palos, Raceway, Sawicki, they're going to all indicate red right now. And that just means that if you rode the trails, you would cause damage to it. Once we are no longer in a shelter in place, there will be trail days. That's an excellent way to get familiar with the trails, get familiar with the people. And most of the trail groups in the state, if you volunteer some of your hours to help work on the trails, they will even feed you lunch. So I went way quicker than I thought I was going to. So we will entertain some questions. But one of the things I want to say is that you should go out and have fun and play. Like, that's one of the reasons I like, and in fact, we'll go back to me now. Let me see if I can stop this share. So can everyone actually see my face now?
Now we see
me or no? What do you see?
See the bike.
Okay, now or no? Are we still seeing the bikes, or are we seeing me?
I'm seeing the bikes, yeah. You gotta.
Okay.
I don't think...
Cancel spotlight video. Okay, how about now?
No.
Okay, I'll step in front of the bikes then for a minute.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have any control.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not the tech guru that Dave is. But one of the things I want to point is the reason I like mountain biking more than road biking, although I do both, I have lots of various types of bikes, is that to me, going out on a mountain bike ride, it's exercise, but I consider it more fun. And for me, when I come across a log or like a rock pile, and I don't make it over it the first time, I like to basically play, but do it a lot of times. And I try different things. Like maybe I don't get up the steep hill the first time, so I'll see if there's a better line. Or maybe I'll switch gears or change my body position. Maybe I need to get a little bit further forward. And what I want to point out too is that those skills I went over with the getting used to standing up on the pedals, that seems to be the thing for most people that takes the most time. Like at this point, I'm always standing on my pedals. But when I first started mountain biking, I felt really uncomfortable doing it, and I would rarely actually stand up on the bike. So as you're riding in your local neighborhood now, your local trails on, a mountain bike, but a road bike, whatever, you can still start to get used to standing up on those pedals. And the same thing with the front and back body separation. That's something, it's a skill that's very useful on the mountain bike trail, but it's also something you can practice on any type of bike at all. So you can practice getting down and going forward and going back. So a lot of these skills, and you can practice without being on a mountain bike trail. And in fact, it's useful to do so, because if you're already used to these skills, then it kind of becomes second nature. And then when you go out onto the trail, you're not worried about, wait, I'm not in ready position. Wait, I'm not, I don't have level pedals. So if you can work on those first, then when you get on the trail, then you can like, oh, there's a route. What do I do at this point? And I know we have people actually from all throughout the state, but a lot in the Chicagoland area. So we have quite a few of you that I believe your closest trail system is going to be Raceway in Carpentersville. And once we can gather again, what's nice is that Raceway has group rides, and they will split you up into groups. So if you are still fairly new to mountain biking, I think they go by letters, but I think there's like a D group or something that's like a no drop ride. So that's a very nice thing, and it's a small trail system. I'm in the southwest suburbs, so Palos is my closest trail system. And we also have Camber has group rides when we are allowed to gather. And that's the same thing. A lot of times it will split down into groups. A few of you, I think in like Aurora and maybe Batavia, your closest trails are going to be Sawawiki and Oswego, but those are more technical trails. So those I would probably go somewhere else too. But I believe we also have people near Springfield and Simba, SIMBA. They also have group rides. So that's a great way to get to know the trails as well, and watch someone who's a little better than you, see what lines they take. And then in the Chicagoland area, I don't think as much further south at this point that I'm aware of. There are also some places that do mountain bike clinics. And in fact, I think they had one in the Peoria area last year too. So I would highly encourage people to take a mountain bike class. Some of it's going to be what I just told you, but what's nice is that then you guys can go through and practice the skills, and you can get some tips. Because I know I'm trying to work on a skill called a manual, and it's very hard to figure out what you're doing wrong when you can't actually see what you're doing. And there's also, like I said, if you get into racing, Camber has the Palos Meltdown, but there are also races throughout the state too, called an Illinois Homegrown Series, I believe. So let me switch back and see if I can actually get the camera working again, because that would make things much easier for me to also see the screen. And I did also have another poll I wanted to do. Pause recording. Let me try this again.
Yeah, it must be. Oh, there you go.
Yay. Okay. So, so we have a lot of chats, but no questions yet, huh?
One just came in. Well, actually, Kimberly just asked a question in the chat.
About pedals and shoes. Clip. So the ones that you can clip in on one side and that are flat on the other are nice. This isn't, when it comes to mountain biking, I don't know if this is quite the same in road biking. You can start an argument about or a debate about almost anything, and flats or clipless are one of the big ones. So let me see, I have very beat up shoes that are a couple years old, but what I have are 510s, which are the most popular shoes. I'm going to see if you can see the bottom. That didn't work out quite as well. But a lot of the pedals will have, Rich, do we have a set of flat pedals I can use? So the shoes I have, they have a wider rubber sole, and then the flat pedals have little metal things sticking up that keep your feet from sliding off. They do also, though, sometimes go in your shins. The ones that you can clip in and it's flat on the one side is okay, but a lot of the clipless shoes, they have more of a hard bottom, which gives you more efficiency. You're not losing as much pedal. But then if you flip it to the flat side and you're putting your foot just on that, there is also a possibility that your foot's going to just slide off the pedal. So there are a lot of people that swear by clipless pedals. I was clipless for 20 years and only switched to flats while I was getting my certification, and then I actually decided not to go back. Oh, so this might be what you're talking about. So something like this, if you had more of a shoe with a rubber bottom as opposed to that hard composite, what is it, plastic, that might work better. But the one thing is, like, a lot of people swear by the clipless pedals, and then what you just want to be really comfortable with being able to clip in and clip out. Because if you decide to go through a rock garden or to go up over a log and you don't quite make it through, you don't want to not unclip and then just tip over, which of course is the same. I once did that at the late ride, switched pedals right before we went, and in front of 10,000 people didn't unclip and tipped over. Okay, and so, oh, and I know that there's a couple people that I know through mountain biking that I believe that their spouses were going to join us today too. And what I do want to point out, it is awesome to ride with your significant other, but it's also a good idea to do some rides without them and not have your significant other being the person that's teaching you everything. And I will tell you that both from experience as well as from some of my friends. So getting your significant other into mountain biking is awesome. If you can bike together, that's a wonderful thing, but make sure that you're not the only one giving instruction, because then you might just have more debate and more issues than you want. Thanks for mentioning the forge. So let me see what else I missed. And like the one pictures I didn't get.
Question, something I don't think you've covered yet, sorry, was clothing. So maybe just, what do you typically wear when you ride?
I don't tend to buy a lot of cycling clothes, so I still have a lot of spandex shorts because it's what I've had, but it varies the gamut. There's a lot of people that wear jerseys. I'm partial to the jerseys when I'm mountain biking because it's got the side pockets. Some people think that they're too form-fitting and they have like jersey material but without it because they use a camelback. There's people that wear spandex, people that wear baggy shorts. A lot of them will have like a thin liner inside. You probably don't need as much of a liner as you do when you're road biking, just because you are spending so much time out of the saddle. One of my friends actually rides a lot in jean shorts, which is not something I would ever guess. I do always wear gloves. Padded ones are nice this time of year. Obviously, it's more long-fingered gloves. And then I almost always bring a pump and a multi-tool with me. I do have tubeless tires. And those are kind of a pain to try to get a tube in on the trail. So I know a lot of people bring a tube with them. I just assume I may have a long walk back to the car if I actually put a puncture or something in the tire. Let's see. I said, I believe I do want to, sorry, I did have another poll. And in fact, I think I might have had one more slide. So first, let me make sure I don't have any more slides that I forgot about. Okay, so let me go back to the, okay, so Dave, are you seeing my slide or no?
Yes, yep.
Okay, and I will point out this is actually my son, and he's going over a tree stump on my fat bike. Again, this is my contact info. If there's any questions, you guys can contact me. That was the last one, but like I said, I do have one more poll for you guys, if I can remember how to do this.
And while you're doing that, Gina, I will, I typed in the chat. I want to tell us folks about some of your crashes, because every time you and I see each other, which just tends to be, once a month for her in person, she's always got new bruises or scratches or something. So.
Yeah, so let's get the results of the poll and then I will go into that. So I think we have about half of them. But I will say I do crash more than your average mountain biker, and some of that is because I am always trying to improve my riding, and I'm always trying to go and practice something that I'm having a hard time on. So at Palos, there's a lot of them are multi-use trails, so there's not a lot of hard things, but there are sometimes blood piles off to the side. And if there's one that I'm having a hard time with, I will go out and spend maybe like a half an hour just trying like on that or a steep rocky hill or something, just trying to improve and figure out a better way to get up it. Which means that I tip over more than your average mountain biker. So I think we have almost everyone in. Let me see if I can share that. So again, we have several that are members, some that said not yet. So I do want to point out, let me stop sharing results. We are, like I said, a not-for-profit group, and our largest source of revenue that helps us do our advocacy work is actually through our memberships. The second largest portion would be from our annual bike ride, which unfortunately had to be canceled this year. So consider becoming a member, at least signing up for our e-newsletter and finding out more information about us. And of course, if you guys have questions, let me know. But yes, I usually have a pretty bruise. And it's usually we have a couple trails at Palos that are more rocky. They're double X and double X extension because SRAM was the sponsor. So yeah, some of those areas definitely have things that you'll want to try a few times, or you may want to do a ride around. And if there's an easy way to get over something on the trail, or there is a more technical part, I'm always taking the more technical part. Tell us about your most memorable class. And actually, some of my best crashes weren't something that there's a Friday Fails video that always features spectacular crashes. And mine are usually not the spectacular ones. They're usually something kind of silly and low speed. And we did get a question. What is the best practice for unofficial mountain bike paths? So I would say most of the trails are on Forest Preserve property, and the ones we list on our website are all sanctioned trails. So those are ones that usually in this area, the Chicago area mountain bikers have been in contact with the Forest Preserve. They've told them their plan for a trail. There's like an initial path, and then the Forest Preserve will come out to them, and sometimes they'll say, no, this area is always boggy, or there are an endangered plant species or something here and you need to reroute it. We do recommend that you stay on the sanctioned trails. The unofficial trails, one, sometimes depending on where you're at, you could receive a ticket if you are caught on the trail. Also, if you happen to get injured, they're not expecting you to be on those trails, so it may be quite a while for someone to find you. But also, if they are unofficial trails, they may not be being built by people who have training in trails. Like, say the Chicago area mountain bikers, years ago, IMBA used to have trail courses. So they took those, they learned, and a lot of them have been doing trail work for us for a couple decades now. So they know how to build a sustainable trail and they know how to make it safe. So I know if there's a trail that you think would be awesome to be there, we recommend that you talk to the Chicago area mountain bikers if you're in this area. If you're not in this area, you can contact me and I can try to find out what group is. But we do want to maintain a good relationship. And I know at Wiki and Oswego, there were some people that were building illegal trails and they were almost, they were in danger of losing the whole trail system. The Oswego Park District was going to close the trail, all of the trails to mountain biking. So we do want to be very mindful of that. Do I carry a first aid kit with me? I do not, but I also, like I said, I'm always trying to improve my skills, which is something I should have pointed out, so good thing. But you never want to go too far out of your comfort zone. You always want to, if you're trying something new, you want to be a little nervous. But if it's something that you, like there's things called drops that you ride off something, we'll use the book. Like say you're riding off this and then you drop a couple feet. If you look at something and it scares you to death, then that's not something you want to do today. You want to hold off until you build up your skills or take a class or something. So myself, if I'm riding just with me, I don't tend to carry a first aid kit, but I also know, and yes, Jason O. Young was mentioning the Pink Bike Friday Fails. It's a favorite video of mine. I laugh a lot. And of course, now that I'm an instructor, I also tend to watch a lot and figure out what they did wrong. But for myself, I usually don't crash, but I may be bleeding a little. Usually I just have bruises, so it's good. But if I am teaching a class, then I always have a first aid kit with me. And for one of the places I teach, we also keep EpiPens with us. So that is a good thing. So yeah, since it's in the chat, if you guys ever want to see what you should not be doing on a mountain bike, check out the Pink Bike Friday fails videos because they're hysterical. What else did I miss? Like, I know Jason O'Young is one of our guys that's out at Palos all the time and rides all the time, so he might be able to give me something. David, as someone who's not a huge mountain biker, what haven't I hit on yet?
And Gina, you should be able to, if those guys wanted to share instead of in the chat and speak, you should be able to unmute them.
Okay, any of you guys want to speak, please feel free to give me. Hydration, thank you, Jason. So a lot of people do use Camelbacks. I'm sure we have one at Richards. I tend to just go, I ride every day and I usually go out only for about an hour. So I will usually have one bottle on my bike, and if it's really hot out in the summer, I'll also keep one in my jersey pocket. Since I only go out for an hour, I generally don't have to bring food with me. If I do, I'll sometimes bring a gel, or I will steal something from my kids' candy drawer, like a package of Skittles or fruit snacks or something. How do you share a mountain bike trail? Sorry, who is, I actually don't understand your question.
He's saying if you encounter someone else.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So myself, that did get difficult last weekend at Palos from what I understand, because they are more narrow. For the most part, it is single track, but if you both go slightly to the right, you can still clear by. And a lot of times, you slow down. And for blind corners and stuff, a lot of us have bells, or I'm loud. So I will just call out. So you both go over. And before I get to your second point, and generally, if you are going uphill, you have the right of way because it would be harder for you to get going, although that is sometimes a point of debate. So with hikers and equestrians and walkers and runners, a lot of times I will just say, hey, I'm going to be coming up behind you. Do you mind if I pass? Just like if you're on the paved path, you may notice that if you stay on your left, the people tend to jump to your left. Equestrians, it is definitely more tricky because you don't know if that horse is used to being around people and bikes or not. So talking to the person sitting on the horse is always the best thing, and say, you know, how is your horse with bikes? Do you need us to stop? Can you go? And just basically, you know, just use common sense, just like with everything else. Try to be a courteous person, because just like if we're riding on the street and we go through a red light, then every time somebody else encounters a bike cyclist, they think we all go through red lights. When you're on the trail, you want to kind of be knowledgeable of the fact that if it's the first time they're seeing a biker, you are their only experience with that. But I don't tend to have a lot. And a lot of times on single track, you do see some horses, but equestrians tend to prefer the multi-track more than the single track. And because I work full-time for Ride Illinois, and my son has been doing his schooling at home now since the middle of March, I've been going out at sunrise. So it is pretty rare that I see anyone else on the trail. And if I do, I might see one or two. So it hasn't been a huge thing. But the main thing is to just use common sense. If you're going opposite directions, you each get a little bit over to the right and you slow down. If you're coming up behind someone, try to give them a heads up. Obviously, if they have headphones in, they may not notice that. Okay, so Dave, Jason, I'm not sure who else we have here that I know. What else have I skipped so far?
I'm not seeing anything else in the chat.
Oh, I do want to point out about trail days too, for those of you that do have kids and they need community service hours to graduate. That is one nice thing, is that not only do you get to learn the trails and get to know the people, but it does count as community service hours. So if your child needs it to graduate from middle school or high school, you bring them with, they get introduced to the biking culture, hopefully get addicted, but then they also get to use some of those hours for school. And then there are people that bring a lot more tools and tubes and stuff on the trail than I do. I tend to be a huge minimalist, but I have also had to walk once 4 miles back home because I didn't have a tube with me. But it kind of just varies on how far you're going to be riding if you're with other people, as well as how comfortable you are with hiking with your bike back to the car. No other questions so far.
So do you carry your cell phone with you?
Yes, so I do always carry my cell phone, and it's hooked it up there. I also have a very heavy duty case. I have the OtterBox for it. In fact, I did once when I was clipped in. I didn't make it through a rocky section, didn't unclip, tipped over, and I ended up with a small bruise on my back where the phone was, but the phone itself was in good shape. So I always keep my cell phone in a jersey pocket, and it's in a pretty heavy duty case so that if I fall, there's not a problem. And that's part of that's because I have a fancy Garmin bike computer and it hooks up to the phone with Bluetooth. But that way too, if there is an issue with me, I could call. And a lot of times before we had our pandemic, my son would be at school when I was riding, and I'd want to keep the phone with me in case there was an issue with him. How much does my bike weigh? Or how much do bikes weigh in general? What's the average weight for a mountain bike, Rich?
Low 30s if you spend more money.
Probably low 30s. Mine is yeah, mine's probably upper 20s. Mine is actually a carbon frame. And I got lucky. The bike I have was one of Richard's bike's demo fleet. And I came into the shop actually for something else, and they convinced me to try out the bike, and I was able to buy it at a significant discount. Where would someone look for beginner mountain bike classes? Well, unfortunately, right now, no one is doing them, but there are both REI and Ninja mountain bike clinics run in the Chicagoland area. REI does an awful lot of the classes at Palos, also at Big Marsh. Ninja does them at Raceway, but there's also several other clinics that have, I know one came to Pamba last year. So if someone wants to, I'll try to find that out, and I can try to send an email or put a link to that. But unfortunately, right now, no one is having clinics till probably at least beginning of June. What is a good? Well, that totally depends on what area you're in. If you're in the Palos area by me, Dirt Smart, yes, is another guy. So at Palos, there are trails called the Connectors, basically is what they're commonly known to. They start at the mountain bike staging area and they go to Wolf Road Woods. Those are pretty mild. At Raceway, there are some mild trails. There's also, that's in Carpentersville. Andreas Bike Park in Carpentersville actually has a flow trail. But you could also just, and then like Peoria, I know they have a huge amount of trail systems, but that really depends on where you are, Linda. Are teens able to get into parks without adults? They can. I think it very much depends on the teen. I have been out on the trails and encountered teens, and being a mountain bike instructor and a league certified instructor, I felt compelled to adjust their helmets with them. I guess it depends on how responsible your kid is and how good their skills are. If you're not sure either of their skills, or if you're not sure that they're going to go try to find something to jump off of, that might be something that you would want to go with them. But I believe, at least at all the camber trails, they're mainly forest preserve districts and park districts. I don't think there's any requirement for an adult to be with them. And Linda, can you put in the message, or can you send me a message of what town you're actually in? Actually, I might have that here. like I said, what the beginner trails are, Elk Grove Village. So your closest trail might actually be, Dave, how far are you from Carpentersville?
Yeah, just other side of the Fox. So yeah, 25.
Raceway, they definitely have some easier trails, and a lot of the trail systems will have like kind of an easier line and a harder line. And a lot of times, if it is like say a log pile or something, there may also be a way to ride around. Basically, I would ride within your comfort zone. And if it's the first time I am at a trail system, if there's something that I'm not sure what's on the other side, then I just stop, go look and check it out. Even at the Palos trails, there's a trail called Through Ravines. And sometimes at the bottom of the third ravine, it gets rutted out. So if I haven't been on that one in a while, I may actually stop and check out the third ravine so I know what I'm going to. I use a bike bar to transport my bike. So I have a hitch rack that actually holds the wheels as opposed to the frame. And part of that is because I am so tiny, I'm under 5'2". Most of my frames did not fit well on a bike rack that actually held the frame. So then I would have to get that bar. And if you are driving on a really bumpy road, or say if you're going to a race and you have to drive through the grass to get there and it bounces around, it has taken some chunks of paint off of some of my older bikes. And then I'm also lucky, in part because I'm so tiny, I can also throw my bikes in the back of my car if need be. So I know Richards has a lot of Thule racks. Those, did I pronounce that right? Those are very popular. Some of the mountain bikers by me, we kind of all lust after the one-up racks. I have a Ceres that's been working well, I think longer than my son's been around, and he's almost 14. So I'm trying to think, but like, so once we actually get to the point that we can meet together again, most of the trail groups like Camber and Simba, Corba, Pamba, they all have group rides. So that's an excellent way to, find one of the beginner groups. Don't go with the speedy guys that are warming up before the ride. And they can help you know, and also go out sometimes with like people that are patient. There was one summer I was trying to get over a log pile, and I don't know how many times I'd get to the top and tip over. So, it helps you improve your skills, and it gives your friends some comedy to watch you. So, and there could be more questions about mountain biking. If there is more questions about Ride Illinois, we can do that. And about the teens, I believe Ninja was actually going to start having youth clinics as well. But if you have a teenager, I believe any of the mountain bike clinics, you could sign them up for. If they're younger than maybe 17, sometimes you need an adult with them. But that's also, even though I am completely addicted to mountain biking, that's something I have not gotten my son into yet. Every time I get a new bike, he wants to ride it, but he hasn't really wanted to go on single track with me. And so one other thing I did not point out is getting a bike that actually fits you, that's your proper size, is probably a lot more important than mountain biking than in other types of biking. Because if you have a road bike that's a little too large, or a hybrid bike, it's not as much of a big deal. But with mountain biking, because you are moving around on the bike so much, and like I said, once you kind of start increasing your skills and you want to ride over logs and rocks, if it's too big, it's going to be really hard to maneuver. So making sure that when you stand over the bike, you have at least a couple inches of clearance, but that you also just feel comfortable, that you're not really stretched out, is a huge thing. And if you're average size, you don't tend to have a problem. When you're as short as me, it's sometimes very hard to find bikes that fit you. How are we doing on?
We're doing fine. I think my takeaway is that you're short.
Yes.
No. No, I know this has been very helpful for me, because I'm not a mountain biker, even though I ride a mountain bike for my commuting and that.
Wait, you haven't been with us that long yet. I'll turn you into one yet.
Yeah. And maybe, you know, Gina, one thing we can consider, I know you mentioned like the group rides that Camber does and other groups do. You know, maybe there's one, again, once we can get together again, that, you know, we can invite folks to come out, you know, kind of spotlight that ride, and knowing like you might be there and you can
Right.
kind of help with some
We
skills.
can definitely do, yeah. Yeah, I think all of the mountain bikers in the area are waiting for nice weather when it's not all of a sudden snowing in April, as well as the time that we can all get together. Yeah, in fact, there's quite a few that also have mountain bike destinations. There's quite a few that also have social things too. So Camber at Palos as well as Raceway, they'll have like a group ride, and then they'll meet up afterwards. And people will bring stuff to grill. And if it's at a bike shop, you might bring your own beverages. If it's at like a brewery, you might buy theirs. But yeah, so somebody asked about mountain bike destinations. Depends on where you are here in the Chicagoland area. I know that, you know, Palos is our kind of crown jewel because we have nearly 30 miles of single track there. But there's a lot of us that have gone to Kettle Moraine is close. A lot of people go every year to Copper Harbor around 4th of July. Memorial Day, there's usually a big trip. People go to Brown County in Indiana. God, Jason, you actually do more of these trips than I do. And then we have some that will actually trek out to Whistler and stuff. Having a 14-year-old, I don't generally do as many of these, but I did make it to both Levis Trout in Wisconsin last year, which was nice because they had a wide variety of trails, and there was a trail day going on while I was there, which is great because then you can talk to the trail crew and say, okay, what is your easiest trail? So I knew what trail to bring my son on. And then, okay, where are your most technical trails? So you know where to go play. So I think, and Wisconsin also, they used to have a big race series. They also have a 12-hour series, but they have a lot of fun places to ride in Wisconsin. There's an awful lot. So in the Peoria area, there's a huge amount of trails there as well. And the Pamba folks are great. Probably on par with Camber. Oh, so Jason has not been to Copper Harbor yet either. I believe that one's in Michigan.
I think this has been great. Give folks one more opportunity to ask any questions. Obviously, they've got your email as well.
Yeah, and if we can try to do, unfortunately, I know some of you are from down, we had somebody sign up from Springfield and someone I think in Quincy. We more than likely would not be able to do some group mountain bike rides there, but I would be happy to, you know, talk to the Camber folks at Raceway and Palos and try to invite some of the Ride Illinois people to do a group ride as well. And of course, if you're thinking about getting into mountain biking and you're not sure, there are quite a few places, a lot of bike shops that will either rent you a mountain bike or let you demo one. So then you can kind of check it out with the group and decide if it's into you. But particularly when I teach mountain bike classes, we always ask the participants what they're hoping to get out of the class. And when it comes to me, I say, well, my goal is always to get as many people addicted to mountain biking as possible.
You are enthusiastic, that's for sure.
Usually a good thing.
Looks like you've answered all the questions.
Okay. Well, if you guys do come up with anything else, you can email me or you can contact Dave and I through Facebook. And I want to thank Richards again for hosting us. It was nice. They had already closed. They've been cleaning everything down here. And probably just like your shop, they're all getting a little bit busy right now. So if you have an old mountain bike sitting in your garage that you haven't ridden in a while, expect at least a week or so for them to tune it up for you, because it seems like everyone's thinking about bike riding right now. Okay, so should we end it?
I think so, yeah. This is great. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you guys all so much for attending today. I hope you have a great evening and a great weekend.
Bye-bye.